Hey, friends, and welcome back to our very last group gathering for the bridge. This is the group two Zoom, and today it is Justin and I. Justin, back for round two. Thank you so much for joining us again. Uh,
Always fun.
Thank you, thank you. And today we're going to be talking about Andrea Gibson's wonderful poem, Angels of the Get Through. And I thought we could start out just by talking a little bit about embodiment and storytelling and what it was like for the first time this 9 weeks to actually see the poet themselves perform their poem. How was it different than just reading words on a page as we've been doing over these last 9 weeks to you, Justin?
Because you did post Audre Lorde
Right.
reading Cole, but we didn't see her in that. Yeah. So there was something about hearing her voice, but you don't get the full embodied experience like you do with um, Andrea Gibson's poem. So it was, I think, raw is the word that comes to mind. I mean, in part because of the uh, nature or story, so to speak, of the poem and what they're sharing about. Um, right. And it got me thinking about, throughout most of human history, our storytelling, our songs, our poetry, or what have you, was oral and was performed, right? Writing is a relatively new invention for us, and
Mhm.
literacy of a vast majority of the population is even more recent. Um, and so there's something about that for me is kind of, there's pros and cons, right? Um, um, but to hear it from the writer themselves, right, and to get at or get what are their emotions, what is their intonation, what are they emphasizing?
Mhm.
Um, really, if we were just reading it, we might have put those tones, emotions, emphases, accents, what have you, in various places, and we still can if we were to read it. Um, so I think there's something gained there in terms of we're getting to some extent more in terms of authorial intent, which I know is not really what we've been going for in a lot of ways with this course. Um, but we get to interact more directly with that because we have more going for us there, right? The interaction is between the piece, the creator, the reader, listener,
Mhm.
right? Um, Whereas if we had just read it, right, it also got me thinking about, like adaptations of books to movies or something like that, right? I feel like there's something gained and something lost in that, right? When it's just reading it, there's a lot that your mind creates characters, locations, and all that, right? When you see it on the screen or illustrations in a book, even.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know about other folks, but for me, it can be hard not to then picture it that way, right? Um, so for me, it was a mix.
Mhm.
Wondering what it would have been like if I had simply read it without or read it first without the performance. But there's so much richness in the performance as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Absolutely. You said so much there I want to talk about, but I feel like first, just for the sake of letting Andrea Gibson wash over us, maybe we both watch the performance live together, and then we'll return to some of great points that you made in the shadow of that text. I thought I had this all teed up, guys. Sorry about that. Let me try again. Share Angels of the Get Through. Hmm. Technology thwarts me again. Let's see if I can turn it on in the background.
Perfectly before. Yeah.
It was working perfectly before. Okay, I've got it working here. I'll try one more time. It may be that thing that you were talking about, Justin, with the copyright. So let me try one last time. Oh, well, darn. Well, I guess it's up to you and me, Justin. Let's read it live because the sound is not going to work. I think that there's a hold on this video. Darn. Well, let's you and I read it aloud together. I've actually got the poem ready right here. Um, do you mind reading it aloud? And I'll read it next, but this time maybe you could just get us started off.
All right. This year is the hardest of your whole life. So hard you cannot see a future most days. The pain is bigger than anything else. Takes up the whole horizon, no matter where you are. You feel unsafe. You feel unsaved. Your past so present, you can feel your baby teeth. Sitting on the couch, you swear your feet don't reach the floor. You keep remembering the first time you saw a bird's nest held together by an old shoelace and scraps of a plastic bag. You knew the home of a person could be built like that. A lot of things you'd rather throw away. You keep worrying you're taking up too much space. I wish you'd let yourself be the Milky Way. Remember when I told you I was going to become a full-time poet and you paid my rent for 3 years? Best friend, angel of the get-through. All living is storm chasing. Every good heart has lost its roof. Let all the walls collapse at your feet. Scream timber when they ask you how you are. Fine is the suckiest word. It is the opposite of here. Here is the only place left on the map. Here is where you learn laughter can go extinct and come back. I am already building a museum for every treasure you unearth in the rock bottom. Wholly vulnerable cliff, God Mason, heart heavier than all the bricks. Say this is what the pain made of you, an open, open, open road, an avalanche of feel it all. Don't ever let anyone tell you you are too much or it has been too long. Whatever guards the feet of the bridge of a song, you are made of that thing, that unbreakable note. That photograph of you at 5 years old, the year you ran away from school because you wanted to go home. You are almost there. You are the same compass you have always been. You are the same friend who never left my side during my worst year. You caught every tantrum I threw with your bare hands, chucked it back at that blood moon, said, it's okay. Everyone's survival looks a little bit like death sometimes. I wrote a poem called Say Yes while I was cursing your name for not letting me go. Best friends, this is what we do. We gather each other up. We say the cup is half yours and half mine. We say alone is the last place you will ever be. We say tonight, let's just stay inside reading Pema Chodron while everyone else is out on the town. Pema will say only to the degree we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. You'll say, Pema is so wise. And I'll say, yes, she is. And we are too. Angels of the get through. We are too.
Beautiful reading, Justin. Thank you so much. And I think I just found the solution. So now instead of having to listen to me read it again, hopefully success.
I know you picture and it's like on a map. This looks like an empty place. I never wanted to trap you in it. Wanted you say this year has been the hardest year of your whole life. So hard, you cannot see a future most days. The pain is bigger than anything else, takes up the whole horizon. No matter where you are, you feel unsafe. You feel unsafe. Your past, so present. You can feel your baby teeth. Sitting on the couch, you swear your feet don't reach the floor. You keep remembering the first time you saw a bird's nest held together by an old shoelace and the scraps of a plastic bag. You knew the home of a person could be built like that. A lot of things, a lot of things you'd rather throw away. You keep worrying, you're taking up too much space. I wish you'd let yourself be the Milky Way. Remember when I told you I was going to become a full-time poet and you paid my rent for 3 years? Best friends, angel of the get through, all living in storm chasing. Every good heart has lost its roof. Let all the walls collapse at your feet. Scream timber when they ask you how you are. Fine is the suckiest word. It is the opposite of here. Here is the only place left on the map. Here is where you learn laughter, can go extinct and come back. I'm already building a museum for every treasure you unearth in the rock bottom. Holy, vulnerable clay, God mason, heart heavier than all the bricks. Say, this is what the pain made of me. An open, open, open road, an avalanche of feel it all. Don't let anyone ever tell you you are too much or it has been too long. Whatever guards the feet on the bridge of the song, you are made of that thing, that unbreakable note, that photograph of you at 4 years old, the year you ran away from school because you wanted to go home. You are almost there. You are the same compass you have always been. You are the same friend who never left my side. During my worst year, you copped every tantrum I threw with your bare hands, chucked it back at that blood moon, said, it's okay. Everyone's survival looks a little bit like death sometimes. I wrote a poem called Say Yes while I was cursing your name for not letting me go. Best friend, this is what we do. We gather each other up. We say the cup is half yours and half mine. We say alone is the last place you will ever be. We say tonight, let's just stay inside reading Pema children while everyone else is out on the town. Pema will say only to the degree that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. You'll say, Pema is so wise. I'll say, yeah, she is. And we are too. Angels of the get through. We are too. We are too.
I am so glad it worked out exactly like that, that we got to hear your words. Justin, first, you did a beautiful reading, and then we got to see the author themselves embody it. Um, and I noticed so much that second time around. I've probably watched, like you, we've watched this several times in our close
Mhm.
reading, but I noticed even more that time. Uh,
Mhm.
and I'm really interested in the sounds going on even behind the music. Did you
Mhm.
hear
Mhm.
the open,
Mhm.
open, open road happening throughout?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
Andrea was talking about the all of the garbage that you pull together to make your nest. And this is what a human home can be made of too. And in the background, I swear I hear a dump truck carting something away. And
Wow.
and then they're talking about, all life is a storm chasing, every good heart has lost its roof. And I hear a plane taking off in the background. Like you can't plan these things better. It really makes me wonder something that we were talking about on the discussion boards with other folks earlier in the course. Once you start paying attention to detail, are you are you really noticing, like order in the world that you never noticed before? Or are you just
Mhm.
yourself, in pareidolia fashion, imposing order on the chaos. Regardless, it's so cool to notice all of these things happening that just seem so perfect for the content.
Mhm.
Did you notice anything new?
Hmm. Um, I think one thing I was noticing more, in part because someone on the boards brought this up too, was the location.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, of being up on a roof, of being able to see it. Look, I believe they're in Seattle. I believe that's the Space Needle off in the distance. Um, right. So being kind of up above in this big city, um, like you said, the sounds of the city, the life going on, um, and that makes me think of. I talk about this with folks who are grieving in particular, but it can apply to a variety of things. Of in some ways, life has stopped for you, right? And yet the world keeps on spinning, and bills are still due, and people are still having arguments and going to birthday parties and and all that, right? And so
Right.
Andrea is talking about this horrific year their best friend has gone through, as well as their own horrific year from the past. Um, and yet the city keeps on churning, and what pains are contained in those other buildings in the background, and
Wow.
um, stories that keep on moving. We wish the world would stop because our world has stopped in some ways. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that maybe was one of the main things I was noticing more this time, thanks to
Yeah,
someone else's close reading of it.
absolutely. I hadn't even considered how, yeah, it begs the question of who's on the next roof. Who else feels
Mm.
isolated over there when you see all those buildings in the background and you're on top of one. On one hand, you are, like they say in the poem, every good heart has lost its roof. You're at the top of this roof in this really vulnerable, liminal, heart forward space. On the other hand, you may also feel isolated. You may also feel alone. You may also feel in danger. It's kind of precarious up there. Um, and yet you see all of these other buildings in the background, like all of these little islands to themselves. Such a great point. And you said, you may be grieving, you may be having the hardest time of your life, but all those sounds in the background, the city is still moving, the world is still spinning, and how that can actually make it feel that much more lonely. And yet I noticed too, because of that conversation on the boards that you guys were having about location, I noticed that they're not actually sitting, Andrea and the musician aren't actually sitting with their legs dangling over or anything. They're actually sitting right up next against that black fence. And it made me think of the way they're relationship, or the relationship that is described in the poem between the best friend and the speaker, is kind of like a guardrail, is some
Mm,
sort of
mhm,
safety,
mhm,
even in this precarious, liminal, scary space. How relationships can function like guardrails. Also, in light of the conversations that you were having on the board, you noticed how Andrea was rocking, you know, um, and I believe you said, it could signal a kind of self-soothing or just a kind of rocking to the music.
yeah.
And and yeah, I noticed that a lot this time too. Did you notice anything else about how Andrea was using their body in any new ways?
Think since I was looking in the background more, maybe not as much, but let me think. I did remember the rocking, and I think partly I noticed, wow, that is going kind of throughout. I mean, there are times when they're still, I think, but there is a lot of movement. And you're talking about the friendship and the guardrail. I have wondered about the relationship with the guitar player,
Mm,
right? Is this a professional relationship? Is this simply someone they hired for this piece and don't really have much of a relationship? Is this the best friend that is being referenced, or a friend? It's interesting, as you're talking about kind of a loneliness, maybe being up on the rooftop, but Andrea's up there with someone. They
mm,
don't really interact much, or at all in my uh, anyway. Andrea's not really talking to them, it doesn't seem, and the guitar player isn't really, obviously they're working together of sorts, but I don't know, it didn't really feel estranged or negative or anything, but it also didn't feel like super connected. So maybe some of that loneliness is
mm.
played out there even when you're around other people.
Oh, interesting.
Me alone in a crowd, not a crowd of two in this case. But, so kind of their bodies in that space together, and I don't know that I was thinking about it much this time, and I don't think I wrote about it, but there's a camera operator up there too, right? They're not
Hey,
in the frame, but there's someone and they're deciding, or they talked about it ahead of time or something, like, when am I panning? Who am I focused on? I'm looking down at Andrea's uh, leg at one point when they're rubbing it. There's at least one other person up there.
good point. Yeah, so as I was trying to choose the right Andrea Gibson video, I mean, how do you do that? I was, hours just sobbing, going through
Mm.
trying to find one. And it's so hard when there are so many that are so appropriate to the discussion of narrative medicine because Andrea
Mm.
went through, an experience with terminal cancer that took them away from us just a couple of short months ago. But so there's a lot to talk about just from a healthcare perspective, and a care receiving perspective. But I actually find that after watching hours and hours of Andrea Gibson poetry, some of my favorites are their love poems. They're madly in love with their partner. And there's one of the first ones that I saw that was a love poem, was actually done with this very same guitar player, who sang a little bit before Andrea spoke the love poem. Who I do know that Andrea's partner is not this guitar player; it's a different person. But this time it was in front of a live audience. And it kind of had like a concert feel. And the camera would pan to the faces of everyone watching. And as you were just talking about this experience actually being a triad, it made me think about how when you're in a more of a performance arena, how every single person there somehow becomes a part of the performance. In
Mm.
a way, their reactions are creating a dynamic with the speaker that influences the speaker, may influence the musician. And it really is this lightning in a bottle thing, that even I, not being in the lived audience, but watching it on camera, could feel palpably the energy in the room as people just sunk into this juicy, wonderful love poem. So yeah, how interesting that even the audience members in a performance piece become characters or at least influences for the speaker. Yeah. And two, the musician, I think the musician this time, for the first time, I really leaned into the words of the song, trying to catch them and how they were interplaying with the words of the poem. And I didn't quite catch the first line, but I think I caught the others, something along the lines of mine, it looks like an empty frame. There was something about a picture in the first line. I've never wanted to trap you in it. I just wanted to keep you safe. And I don't I think there's something there about codependence um, that I don't know makes me start thinking about the poem in a different light. There's I don't know. I don't know. Let me think if I can unpack this. The poem itself is so I'm here for you. You're here for me. Whatever you need, we're going to make it work. Yes, we've gone through hard times together. Yes, we will always be there together. Alone is the last place you will ever be. I'm here for you. That's the feeling I get from this. Like yeah, everything may be falling down. Let it fall down. We will find this unbreakable thing at the bottom that you are and that we are, right? But then the beginning song actually frames it in this really interesting way that but I don't want to trap you in this. Like you are still free. You are still free. Um, I just want to keep you safe. So there's like I guess there's a danger of codependence when two spheres totally overlap like that. And this is saying, no, we're separate but together. There's like a little bit of I don't know, like a caveat in that seems really delightful with the music. That's an unformed thought, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts
Yeah,
about?
interesting. I did struggle to understand what the musician was saying. I after, a couple of times or whatever, I did catch stuff about the frame. I think I kind of understood it as maybe the friend being worried about being trapped, so making clear like, no, that's not my intention. So maybe one of those arguments or misunderstandings, or part of that, the relationship has been tried and tested, and not simply because they've gone through horrible things in their lives, but some things have happened when they've been upset with each other. But as you were talking about that, it made me think of, YouTube recommended to me another video on their channel, which was the same poem, but a music video of sorts, I think it called it. And it was a different recitation of the poem. It sounded like it was maybe in front of an audience, perhaps, but it was a lot that you don't see, Andrea. But it's a lot of short, um, capturing two friends interacting, potentially partners. I think there's at least one where they kiss, but mostly it seemed kind of platonic. Um, and all these very positive looking. So interesting that perhaps this codependence or a warning against it, I juxtaposed with that music video, which does not seem to suggest that at all, but showed a lot of what seemed to be trying to express, in my interpretation at least, very positive, close, caring, supportive relationships of people of various ages and genders and such.
Awesome.
Yeah, so interesting how depending on and that musician was not featured in that music video. So
Mm.
Andrea just starts talking. So interesting what sort of context, what other aspects of the performance are there can also then suggest different understandings or interpretations.
hmm What
Yeah.
what tone did you get from the music video versus what tone did you get from
Mm-hmm.
body performance?
Yeah, the tone I felt was far more uplifting
Hmm.
in the music video. Not that this is, I feel like in a lot of ways it's a very positive, ultimately, for a very difficult experience being expressed, right? This root of the relationship, right? The friendship. Um, yeah, but I only watched the music video once, but I feel like maybe some of the harder stuff didn't hit as hard because there were all these smiling people interacting and hugging
Right.
and things like that. Um, Whereas you see Andrea rocking and rubbing their leg, and this is just but they look very tired, worn down, exhausted in my mind as they're expressing, and understandably so, going through this, potentially still going through this with the best friend,
Mm.
and reflecting on their own really hard times as well. Um, Obviously, there's clear love, care for the friend being expressed there too. Um, but those hard things really hit as well. And I think that hits differently when you're just seeing them speak it versus here are these other images that you can look at while this is
Yeah.
going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I, like I really was taken aback by the vulnerability of
Mm-hmm.
Maria's body as they're speaking, the rocking, but also the shaking of the voice. Like it pulls at my heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
I feel with them as they're speaking, that place of just sheer vulnerability. Um, and yes, how that can be undercut by all of these positive images kind of jumping in the background, you know, um, like mandatory optimism, like, yes, but you're supported. There's something very real about seeing it through their body. Um, I couldn't agree more. Um, last question about just your experience of this poem, and then we'll take this into a little bit of a writing opportunity. Um, do you think this poem has an ethic kind of bubbling underneath it? Uh, is it trying to tell us what should be done, or how how we may be able to have relationships in a time of, hard times? Is there an ethic here at all?
This came to mind, and let me go back to the poem here,
Yeah.
if I can quote it correctly, was, um, and I'm not sure that Andrea is saying this is what all friends should be or what have you, but when they say best friend, this is what we do. We gather each other up. We say the cup is half yours and half mine. We
Mhm.
say alone is the last place you will ever be. And so an ethic there of shared burden,
Mm.
of reciprocity, of we're in this together.
Mhm.
The next part is then staying inside, reading Emma Chodron, and so uh, that plays along with that being together, but also I see that as more of a potentially laid back evening, kind of at home kind of thing. So kind of that, yeah, there are hard times and we are there for each other through thick and thin. And also sometimes we just hang out at home on a Friday night and we read an author we really enjoy, and it ties into the hard stuff too, at that point, because we're talking about a hard time that the friend is going through.
Yeah.
um but I think that, yeah, when you said that, the ethic of that reciprocity, of shared journeying together. I mean, I keep in my mind coming back to Frodo and Sam from The Lord of the Rings. Like everyone needs a Samwise Gamgee in their life.
Mhm.
Um, Frodo is going through the worst year of his life.
Right.
Uh, and I don't think it's even a full year. Or, no, it is to the day to get back. That's right. Anyway,
Good Tolkien lore.
I could geek out with you here. but yeah, and that I'm there for you when you're going through it, you're there for me when I'm going through it. Um, and I want you, I also go back to that. I want you to, let me read it to get it. You keep worrying you're taking up too much space. I wish you'd let yourself be the Milky Way. Remember when I told you I was going to become a full-time poet and you paid my rent for 3 years, which just as I went back to this, I hadn't really put these two together in this way before, those two pieces. But um, I think it's talking about the friend feeling like I can't keep talking about what I'm going through. Other people are tired of it. They're sick of it. Let me just kind of pearl in on myself. And Andrea is saying, no, 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 be the Milky Way, be a galaxy, right? Take up as much space as you need and you are. And I think Andrea would also say that for their friend just in general, not even during this hard time, like be you, take up space. Um, there's plenty of room in the universe for galaxies upon galaxies.
Absolutely.
Um, but then also right after that is, which I said, yeah, I was just noticing, is the, I'm going to work to be a full-time poet now, and you paid my rent, and that made me think maybe the friend is saying that same thing. Be the Milky Way, Andrea. Be this full-time poet. I've got you,
Yeah.
right? How awesome that someone could pay your rent for 3 years. I don't know a lot of people that even if they wanted to couldn't afford to do that. But like, wow, what a gift to be able to let Andrea become fully this part of themselves. Um, so again, that reciprocity, I think, keeps popping up here.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I think it's recognizing too that it's not always a 50-50 on any given moment or day, right? Andrea, those 3 years of paying the rent, like that was not equal rent wise, right? Or their really bad year, the friend was giving a lot more, catching those tantrums barehanded, right? Taking that rage. And this year, the friend is needing more, Andrea is giving more. Um, but over time, right, it's not that codependent where one is constantly needing or whatever, but they're both giving and receiving, and there's at least an experience of some sort of balance over time there.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to piggyback on that idea because yeah, there's something here about friendship that is it's an ideal without being idealistic. It's real,
Mm,
very real.
mm-hmm,
There's
mm-hmm,
shared burden here, for sure, and there's reciprocity, but there's also times when it doesn't work and they go through struggles and they go through their own resentments. And yet I think underneath all of that, there's this idea of a becoming happening for both of them that requires annihilation, that requires destruction,
mm-hmm,
that requires
mm-hmm,
parts of their lives
mm-hmm,
to fall down so they can get bigger. And
mm,
there's something, I don't know, there seems to be an ethic bubbling in the background for me that's like, I'll be here. I'll be here
mm,
no matter how much everything else seems to change. You need to change. You need to let yourself kind of
mm,
go to those scary
mm,
places and out of your comfort zone, and I'll still be here with you.
mm,
Um, yeah, I love that Pema Chodron quote about let me actually see if I can pull it up here. Only to the degree we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. And I like that Pema uses the plural here. The thing that which is indestructible, not in me, but in us can be found. There's that indestructible thing seems to me to be a shared thing, seems to me to be this thing that we are. And that's why that last line, angels of the get through, we are too. Not you are mine or I am yours, but
mm.
we are too.
Yeah.
I don't know how
This
we,
angel of the get through was singular early on with the rent payment, right? And then at the end it's plural.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I feel like so many of these types of poems can become kind of um, uh, idealistic and optimistic, and yeah, I'll be
mm,
hard times, but this poem to me seems to lean into the hard times and to ask us to lean into
Yeah,
the hard times.
yeah.
Um, to scream timber when they ask you how you are, fine is the suckiest word. You know, be real, be here. Here is
Mm-hmm.
the only place left on the map. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about this. I'd love, before we go into a writing exercise, I'd just like to hear a little bit about how you think all of this intersects with narrative medicine, or if not talking about, if not specifically the poem, just this whole 9 week experience of narrative medicine. How does it fit in with you for your life, professionally, personally? What little nuggets of wisdom are you taking home from all of this?
Ooh. Um, let's see. I've noticed myself doing more of is kind of just what we were doing a bit more, angel singular versus angel plural, like listening more for how our patients expressing, right? I can, okay, you're telling me you're depressed or whatever, right? But how are you saying it?
Mm,
How are you expressing it? Are there certain nuggets in there that are standing out, that are getting at something more or personal or things like that? Um, I think, um, and then this Gibson poem here at the end, this lived, embodied, expressed one, right, is bringing in, when we're in the room with people, there's even, right, we're not just, I mean, sometimes they send us messages, in their, in the medical chart or something like that, and we're just dealing with words there, but, looking for the rocking,
mhm,
looking for the hand over the heart, the rubbing the leg, um, looking for, metaphorically in this case, where are they located? On top of a building, over, what is the context? What is their world, their lived experience? Um, and I wouldn't say that I'm not doing anything that before, but I think this class has really been a helpful reminder, some really good targeted practice in that, to be able to kind of refresh, rejuvenate, um, that kind of approach, and doing that too with folks who, sometimes I meet with folks for a long time, and sometimes we have the same conversation over and over and over again. And sometimes after the 40th one, something shifts, and sometimes not. Um, but working to really approach each of those, even though I could go in assuming I know exactly how this is going to go, and I may be right at least some of the time, right? But being open to being surprised, so listening for different nuances, looking for different things, treating it not as if it's the first time, because I want to make sure I'm taking the context of previous kinds of conversations into account as well, but checking those assumptions at the door, even if I'm right, and I'm not always right, of course. Um,
great.
so those are, yeah.
I, I just want to recap this list because it's such a great list. And before I list it off, I want to say people are always asking me for like a hard and fast, like, how do you do narrative medicine in a clinical setting? And I'm like, I don't. I, because it's so much of what we do in workshop here is something I I may have coined this term, I don't know, but I think of as oblique learning. Like it's not direct. It's something that kind of like filters in, through osmosis, that we don't know why we start paying more attention to details. Maybe because we're practicing it, with looking at the still world of art, and it allows us the slow time to really sink in and wonder and watch a video several times and pick things up more and realize, oh, wow, there are layers here that maybe you become more attuned to it, maybe become more open to it. But there's no real, like, this is how you do it. It is just a practice that we keep practicing together. But what you've just listed out, I think, is actually a pretty good, running list of questions that practitioners might be able to ask themselves in a clinical setting. What specific words is your patient using? Is it singular? Is it plural? What tense are they using? Are they living in a past tense? Are they speaking only future tense? Are they avoiding a tense?
Yep.
Asked, what is their context? Metaphorically, are they on a roof right now? Metaphorically, are they in a little bed at home that they can't get out of? Like what is their lived experience? What world are they living in? How supported do they feel? All of those questions about context are great. What is their body doing as they're speaking? The rocking, the voice shaking, maybe the uncontrollable parts that are revealing a bit of their subconscious experience to you. Um, and I also loved how you've turned this right back on the practitioner as a self-study as well. You check your assumptions. Instead of being bored with the same story, you are open to nuance. You're open to being surprised. And as you were talking about how people come in with the same story, it also made me think just about how I, as a student of narrative medicine, how my stories have changed just by brushing them up against the stories of others, you know? So, for example, we may be looking at an artwork that Frida Kahlo, for example, I might be looking at the wounded deer, and I might have a story that resonates with that. And as I write that story, I'm not just writing the story that I've told my mom and my best friend and my husband 1,000 times. Now I'm writing it through the lens of Frida Kahlo and through the lens of all this discussion that we've had around it. And now my story shifts a little bit, maybe a lot of bit. But I think for me as a student of art, looking through the lens of an artist's lens and telling my story kind of cross-pollinated with theirs helps my stories evolve too. So it helps me get out of those rutted paths in a productive way. So many great ideas here for where narrative medicine might be able to take a practitioner. Thank you so much for that great list. So now let's jump into a quick little writing activity. We're going to close out the course with doing a group woven poem. For anybody who's watching this, I invite you to hit pause, or you don't have to because we're going to actually be doing the 3 minutes right here live. But for the next 3 minutes, we are going to be writing to this prompt. Write 3 lines to your angel of the get through. And that can be whatever, whomever, however you define the angel of the get through. Write 3 lines to that thing, being, idea. Um, yeah, we'll take 3 minutes and I'll tell you what we're going to do with all of these lines after we finish. Any questions? Did that all make sense?
I think I'm good to go.
Okay, great. So we're going to take 3 minutes, write 3 lines to your angel of the get through. Set timer for 3 minutes. All right, we have just a few seconds left. Are you all done? Okay, great. Okay, so here's this wacky thing that we're going to be doing. We're going to be creating a group. Whoa, hey-o. We're going to be creating a group woven poem. So I already wrote my 3 lines on the group one call earlier today. So I will just reuse those lines this time so that I don't have more than one voice in our woven poem. And the idea is that, well, first you pick a number, 1 or 2. 2? Okay. And I think you might still be on mute. I don't know. Maybe it was just cutting out for a second. But nope. Okay. It might have just cut out for a second. Okay. So you've chosen 2. So I'll go first. I'll read line 1. You'll read your line 1. Then I'll read my line 2. You'll read your line 2. And then I'll read my 3 and you'll read 3 so that we're weaving in our lines together. And eventually, what we're going to do as people watch this video, they're going to send in their lines and I'll keep weaving in more and we'll just create this whole tapestry inspired by Andrea Gibson's Angels of the Get Through, or Angel of the Get Through. So are you comfortable sharing your 3 lines?
And can you hear me?
Oh, there it is. It came in
Okay.
midway through, so we're good now. Okay, great.
Okay, great.
So, oh, lost my lines. Here we go. All right, so I'll get us started. The hero's journey begins and ends here at the place where our minds meet.
Speak. You could not speak through. Uh-oh.
Time it cut out just at the beginning. Go ahead.
Hmm. You did not speak. You could not speak through the tears. You sat with me in mine.
Not over, not against, not despite, but through.
You encircled me and held back the dark when I was consumed by it within.
You carry me, and I will carry you.
You sent people to me for the ways you could not be there for me.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. What a lovely little poem we've got started here. Just a one, and it's going to grow from here as other lines come rolling in. My hope is that once we have a group poem all ready, with everyone's permission, of course, I'm going to be sending it off to the Intima, which is the narrative medicine, the Journal of Narrative Medicine, for potential publication for our group as our capstone project. Thank you so much for joining us again, Justin. I love, love, love getting to talk with you, all of your wisdom from the field of psychotherapy and from this world of relationship and connection. It was a real pleasure to talk to you again.
Thanks so much. It's been fun.
Thanks, Justin, and thanks everybody. I'll see you all again soon.